Today, I want to talk about inner child. I go to therapy once a week on Thursdays, that's today, and I feel like this is prime time to video and document some thoughts, especially from my therapy session. So, yeah, I went to therapy, and then I have this habit of going to New Earth and buying a coffee afterwards because it's like a minute from my therapist office. So I also kind of want to touch on retail therapy because that's also been something that I need to speak more of and find truth in myself. Because I grew up in retail therapy, and that's how my mother soothed herself, is retail therapy. And so I grew up knowing that that was a soother, and there's something comfortable about going and buying something when you're in an emotional state. And so I've been trying to find balance in that, and also find a better way of tracking my finances. I'm overall really good with my money, always pay my bills, always able to eat, have a little bit of savings and a little bit of debt, but that's okay. But yeah, I'd call myself financially stable. I could definitely have less debt and more savings, and so that's a goal that I'm working towards. But yeah, so I started tracking all my finances and taking a receipt for every transaction, writing it down in a little book, and then making a total of each day, and that's been helpful. And that's been kind of keeping that retail therapy part in check. But then there's also balance of it is nice to go get a coffee, and spend a little bit of money after going to therapy, and also just having that space to kind of zone out in a grocery store for a little bit to process. So finding balance in that. And at least my retail therapy is supporting my friends. Yeah. So there's that part of it that I wanted to kind of touch on. And then, yeah, the inner child work. This last month, part of this kind of darker spot that I'm, speaking of, has been working through a lot of childhood wounds. And I feel like a lot of my inner child has been coming forward, and it's been hard to manage that and to not be embodying that all the time. And I'm finding myself more sensitive and more irritable, which is why I've also not been doing a whole lot of social things, because I'm just in a really sensitive, tender place. And it's sometimes hard to be socially present when I'm in this state. And it's easy to turn off this state when I'm at work, because work Emmy is a whole separate Emmy. She has a routine at work, she has tasks to do. I don't think about any of my issues or childhood wounds or whatever when I'm at work. So that's easy to turn off. But in other social situations, it's a little bit more difficult for me because there's not a task. I'm and there's also this idea that I'm trying to have a good time, not just accepting the moment as it is and having a good time. And so there's that piece to it. So I was talking to my therapist about this today, about not being able to turn off the work, because I feel if I turn off the work and then I get triggered, I just want to do the work and figure it out so that I can live more peacefully and not be in this state. And I just feel I need to work through this so that I'm not so sensitive. And so some tools that she gave me today is, one, setting aside time to work through those things. So setting aside journaling time, or when I feel myself starting to get into that headspace, setting a time limit. Okay, I'm allowing myself to think about this for this amount of time, and then I'm going to try to move on with my day. Because yes, the work has to happen, but you need break from the work in order for the work to happen. Another thing that she said was picturing a bright red stop sign with bright white letters that say stop, and having that imagery in my head when I like get to those thoughts that I'm having a hard time unraveling. So that's something that I'm also going to try. The other thing is naming my inner child. So for her, she had different nicknames as a kid. So my therapist gave the example of like little girl and then her nickname as a child, where I didn't really have many nicknames. And so for me, my inner child is just little girl Emmy. Here's adult Emmy and little girl Emmy. And that's pretty in line with this mantra that I've been telling myself this last month or so too, that goes, I recognize the little girl in me, or the hurt little girl in me, but I do not embody her. And so I think that is super helpful in trying to make that separation. So it's nice because I like had a piece of this like trying to separate her, but there wasn't the full picture. So that's why I'm really thankful that I'm in therapy, because there's so many tools out there that I can access that I just don't know about. And so having a therapist just kind of helps me fill in those blanks. Something that Elise Parker said in a video that I watched of hers recently is being in like, you can be in this like constant cycle of like, okay, there's work, okay, go through the work, okay, there's more work, go through the work, like this constant cycle of like self-growth and like self-discovery. And then you can also just say, no, like, I'm not doing that, and like that's not the present moment. And recognizing that like working through all these things is not necessarily the present moment that you're in. And so bringing mindfulness to it as well, having the sense of like mindfulness and here now-ness, and yes, these are things that I need to work through, but it's not the present moment right now. And I think that's super helpful, along with another quote that I can pull from Don Miguel Ruiz, The Voice of Knowledge. I don't know the exact quote, but he talks about this concept of the speaker in your head, the voice that talks, and then the voice that listens. And the voice that talks can go on, and it can say, you know, you hear things that you're like, whoa, why am I thinking about that? Like, but you don't have to accept those thoughts. The listener can say, okay, yeah, that thought's ridiculous. Like, I don't want to accept that. Or the listener can say, oh, I really want to accept that. Like, what's this? And so having that distinction between like our thoughts are our own, and we have the choice to either listen to what we're saying or to not listen to what we're saying. And I think there's a lot of power in that as well. So yeah, this has been my focus today, and my focus for the last month. And I think after my therapist gave me these tools today, it kind of like brings in this bigger picture of working through this and like getting somewhere a little bit farther than this. She told me that next week I should bring in a photo of myself as a child, and we'll do some more imagery work with that. So I'm excited about that. It feels good to be working through things and to have that reassurance that like this is manageable, and I have all these tools laid out in front of me, and I have the power within myself to embrace this moment in my life and to navigate it. And if you're going through that right now, you also have those tools and the power within yourself to navigate that. So hopefully that was digestible. I'm really excited about having this video series and documenting my journey more and being able to look back on it, because it'll be nice. Like, I kind of wish that I had more of this like to look back on from previous years, which I have previous journals I can look back through, but like hearing myself talk about it, there's just like this really exciting element to it. So I'm really excited to keep doing this. I feel like it's what I gotta be doing right now. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk.